Hey, welcome back. Thanks for joining the channel. Good to see you again. Today's video, I'm not going to do a repair. Well, actually, I will be, if you think about it. But I'm going to do a little tutorial on how to change the signal strength meter display on this Harman Kardon HK690i. Now, when I bought this receiver, this display was dead. Well, it had dead LEDs in it. Some of the LEDs worked, some didn't. And I was looking at the circuit, why wasn't it working, and I finally traced back to the display, the little LED dies that they mount on the printed circuit board. The bond wires fail, and then the display goes out. And this is a multiple use display. It has 7 LEDs in it. 5 are for the LED strength. They have an LED for tuned, when you tune in a channel using the tuner digital lock. And they have a stereo light here as well. So let's get on with this. So I do make these. I get the boards made up, and then I mount the LEDs. These are all brand new components, and I make these available for people that have the dead display. You can't go to Harman Kardon and get that part anymore. So this is a good alternative, and we'll see how this works. I'm going to replace this one as well, because today this one doesn't work. It has a burned out stereo LED. So let's go through the tutorial on how to do this replacement. First step, remove the lid. I already took the screws out to save time. There's 6 screws, 2 on each side and 2 in the back. Remove 6 screws, take the lid off, put it aside. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the tuner assembly, and to do that we're going to need to remove a bunch more screws. We've got 2 screws here. Now you're going to need some basic soldering skills. You're going to need some basic tools too. You're going to need a decent soldering iron with a relatively fine tip. You're going to need some solder. Lead-based solder is probably best. You're going to need something to desolder the original display unit. So you're going to need either a solder wick or a solder sucker bulb, or something to that effect that can remove solder. This is a ground screw here on the side. Remove that. Okay, so the back should be loose. Let's remove this screw here. And one more screw here. Now we should start to see it move. And we have 2 screws here up front. These 2 here that have are mounted this. Got all those screws here. Oh, I took out the wrong screw here. Okay, that's why it's not loose. Should have wrapped my head around there, had a better look, but I didn't see that. Okay, so the rear should be loose. It is, okay. The whole thing's loose. Okay, all our screws are out. So now what we need to do is start disconnecting some wires here. These white connectors, how do you do this is you can get like a little screwdriver or something, and the side that has the hole in it, you lift it up. That one broke off, well, so it just falls off. And just pull these wires out. This thing here just locks these wires in. Try not to bend these up. Same thing here. We've got another harness here. Lift that one up and out of the way. I'm going to remove this big plug. And then there's two smaller plugs here, one with 3 wires, one with 4 wires. Now you can't mix these up because they're all independent. Now we should be able to lift out this tuner. And there we go. Here's our tuner assembly. Put the rest of this aside and then we'll focus on the tuner. So here's the tuner board, the front of the tuner board. We have our vacuum fluorescent display. Got to be very careful. This is glass, and if you bump it, hit it with some tool or anything, it'll bust. You lose the vacuum, your display's dead, and you will never see numbers on this again. There's a little nipple here on this inside. It's not protected, and it's very fragile, so you don't want to bust that, and we're going to be working right next to it, so you got to be aware of that nipple. We're going to remove this whole panel here. And to do that, we're just going to flip it right over. And I got my soldering iron warmed up. Let's see. What I'll do is I'll rearrange the camera so you can see better. So what I'm going to do is just use solder wick here today, just to work through this. I'm not going to use any fancy tools. And we're just going to remove the solder on these 10 pins. The main thing about this is you don't want to try not to overheat the pads on the board because they lift, and then once they lift they're really difficult to repair. You don't want to damage the PCB board. And this Chinese solder braid I bought is not very good stuff. It's just garbage, so I'm just going to fight my way through this. See if I can do this. Just start at one end and work your way through. And I'll show you another way, solder sucker. It's not as clean. It might not be as effective too, but we'll try this. Just heat up the joint, get the solder melted, and then just go in with your tip. It kind of works, but then sometimes and then it leaves all this junk laying around. You gotta clean that up because it could fall into your receiver and short something out. Another method you could probably get away with, is cut the pins. It's kind of hard you can't really get in here with anything to cut the pins, but if you could sever the pins on the top side of the board, the display would obviously just fall out, and then you could just heat each pad and remove what's left of the pin. I don't recommend doing that because it might be more difficult than easy. This solder braid is garbage. I'm just going to put some flux on here. And then keep going. There, it works a little better when you put flux on. Of course, if you buy the good solder braid, you don't have to fight with it. It just works. But I bought myself 50 rolls of this stuff thinking it was a good deal, but it wasn't a good deal because you have to fight with it every time you use it. So I'm just trying to work my way through this batch, and then I'm going to get some good stuff, some half decent solder braid. Just about there. Okay, I think I'm almost done. Might have to clean up a few of these. Maybe this one. I'll try. Okay, I think I got it. Let's see. Now it's held on with double-sided sticky tape, so it should be loose. There we go. Now we'll clean this up. Clean this up with some alcohol and a swab. Looks like I did damage one pad. This one here is damaged. Okay. All right, so we're ready for the new board. Let me get it ready. All right, so we have our display out, but we need to attach wires to the bottom of it so that we can connect it back to the main board here, the main tuner board. And what I'm going to use is, I'm going to use some ribbon cables. I'll supply the ribbon cables with the kit. But this is what we're going to use. These are spaced, properly spaced, and put the ribbon cables in the holes. And let's solder this up. Okay, give it an inspection. None of them are shorted. Everything's good. And we don't need these cables that long, so we're just going to trim them. I think that should be plenty long enough. Now we can reattach this to the board. So to install the new board, pull these off. And that keeps our pins straight. Feed it in. Come on. One of my holes is plugged. Which one is it? Let me have a look here. Oh, it should be all open. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay. These need to go flat. Okay. All right. So all we need to do now is remove the double-sided tape. And press that into position. Make sure it's straight. And check for shorts. Let's clip these wires. They're a bit long. Okay, give that a good inspection. We're done. We can put it all together. And that's the finished product. All right, so installation is just the opposite of removal. Drop it in. And we have our screws. We could put this all back together right now. Silver screws go on the inside. The black screws go on the back panel. Last step is just put all the wiring back together. Connect the wiring harnesses before we put the lid on. If this breaks off, you can still use it. It just orientate it the way it normally is and just shove it in. It just locks the wires in. Okay, we have one connector here. There's the other wire. Here it is. Okay, we can test it now. Let's do a test before we put the cover on. Make sure everything's working. So we got turn the power on. Got it on AM. That's FM. You can see our signal strength is picking up noise. Let's tune up through this bands. I don't have any speakers hooked up here. .5 is a station, I believe. Yeah, locked in, stereo. So all the lights are working. I'm not getting 5 bars. If I had a stronger signal on it, I would get 5 bars, but I'm only getting 4. Scan through the band here, we'll see 94.9. It's locking on the stations, it's showing it's tuned. Signal strength meter is working. It's a nice bright display. Like the original ones were quite dim. The LEDs were quite dim. But it is working. Excellent. So that's basically how you do the swap on the LED display board. Now this isn't just for the 690, it's also for the 590 and 490. I think any Harman Kardons that use these LEDs in this configuration. 795 I believe also. So if you have one of these tuners, or not tuners, but receivers that use this, you can use this, my replacement board, for a fix. I hope you found this useful, and I hope you find the replacement board useful. I hope it helps you out if you have a nice one of these vintage receivers and it's got the dead display. You can now have a solution for fixing it. Alright, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you on the next one.